Federal government says it is working to help provinces improve housing affordability by better regulating short-term rentals. The BC government recently said it is introducing legislation in May to regulate rentals from services including Airbnb and Vrbo or VRBO. The latest data says that short-term rentals make up 15.2% of the Canadian accommodation sector, and critics say their popularity is pushing rents and housing prices higher. Joining us from Montreal this morning with a closer look is David Walksmith. He's associate professor at McGill University and head of the Urban Politics and Governance Research Group. Welcome.
Good morning.
So taking a look across the country in BC, this new legislation will limit short-term rentals to primary residences, require registration of hosts, and increase fines for rule breaking to $3,000 per offense. What kind of impact is this going to have on housing affordability in Canada?
I think what we're going to see is that this new legislation in BC is going to be the gold standard for how provinces across the country tackle the issue, because it's very housing focused. It's not taking aim at home sharing. If you own, or if you live in your own place and you'd like to rent out a spare room, you're perfectly welcome to do so. But it's saying that commercial short-term rentals, which take houses off the long-term market, are not going to be allowed.
So the hope here is by making it really cumbersome for anybody to own like a secondary property that they use for an Airbnb, that they'll want to dump it and sell it, and that'll put housing back into the market. Is that the dots that they want us to connect?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think we've got very strong evidence that that's what's going to happen here. Because, during the pandemic, for example, my team's research found that thousands of commercial short-term rentals went back to the long-term rental market because there was no one there to rent them on Airbnb. And, if you have rules saying you're not allowed to do this, we're going to see property owners decide to do something with their property that's going to make some money. And that means they'll find a tenant or they'll sell to someone who will.
A report from the Urban Politics and Governance Research Group says that most revenue from short-term rentals goes to multi-listing operators, and an increase of one short-term rental unit per 100 housing units will lead to an average increase in a neighborhood's rental price of $49. So how have other provinces tried to deal with this market?
Well, what we've seen so far is that the provinces that have put in rules about short-term rentals have really just been focused on kind of information gathering, on making sure that hosts register and get some kind of permit. That's the case with Quebec, where I live. That's the case with Nova Scotia. BC is the first province that is also putting some significant restrictions on the market. And until now, we've seen that mostly at the municipal level. So Vancouver and Victoria and BC already have pretty tight rules. Toronto and Ottawa do. Montreal does. What BC's learned, I think, is that it's not really feasible to ask hundreds and hundreds of municipalities to each design their own set of rules, which are very, very similar at the end of the day, come up with their own enforcement mechanisms. The province is saying, we'll do this once and we'll do this well. And I think that's the thing that's going to end up being copied elsewhere in the country.
Airbnb representatives say that the new BC regulations are going to take money away from renters and decrease tourism revenue. So do the benefits in housing affordability outweigh the possible consequences of this new legislation?
Well, I think that the government in BC has thought about this carefully. And in fact, in the major tourist areas of the province, the short-term rental rules are not going to prohibit commercial short-term rentals from being offered. So, for example, in Whistler and Tofino, those kinds of communities, you're still going to be allowed to offer commercial short-term rentals that aren't in your own home. They're really targeting cities where the housing affordability issues are very tough and where there's an adequate supply of other kinds of tourist accommodation. So I don't think we're going to see those kinds of issues. So
if I'm applying that to other places in the country, like a cottage country, for example, how does that play out? Same idea?
I think that's right. And I think, this is probably part of the reason why so far it's been municipalities doing the rulemaking here, because we understand that, the concerns in Toronto are not going to be the concerns in Muskoka, the concerns in Montreal aren't going to be the concerns in the Eastern Township. So what BC's done, I think, is said we have to recognize that it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach, but that there's a lot of value to doing this once and doing it well, instead of letting every single individual municipality have to figure this out on their own.
It is a hot topic, and we're glad that you joined us for it. Thanks so much, David.
My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.